This is To Catch a Con Man, Season 2, In the Victim's Voices. I will take you on another fascinating journey, but this time you will hear from other men and women that, like me, have fallen prey to the various cons, scams, and deceits by one of the most prolific and successful con artists to live and operate in the Midwest. You know him as Ricky Dugo.
Could $100,000 sustain my life? It couldn't even come close. So listen to me. If I was going to be in some sort of con, scam, conniving thing, it'd be for millions. It wouldn't be for $100,000.
To Catch a Con Man is brought to you by Studio 847 in Long Grove, Illinois. Listener discretion is advised, as some of this programming contains language and content that might be offensive to some listeners.
Join me on this adventure to catch a con man. This is Adam Albin. Thank you for continuing to listen to Catch a Con Man in the Victim's Voices. This next victim comes to us from California, a man that has never met Ricky Dugo in person. Yet an opportunity to buy a dream home for him and his wife in Chicago opened up, and a decision to rent out the house was made. The credit application looks promising, and a 2-year rental contract is signed. Unbeknownst to Faraz, the people living in his house are not Jeff Klein, nor his family. Here we go. Let's hear from my good friend, Faraz. So it's Tuesday, October 24th. We're talking to Faraz, who is the homeowner of 1674 Lock Lane, the Vernon Hills, Greg's Landing house that Ricky Dugo was living in at the time that he pitched me my scam. Faraz, thanks for joining. I do appreciate your time. Specifically, throughout this entire process, I wanted to just make sure that you knew how important our relationship has been to me. You've always given me really positive feedback and encouragement. And then you've also provided me with insane details that's really helped me build this case. And it's stuff that I still use today, and it's all part of my Dugo file. So I did want to give you that shout out, just first and foremost, just man to man. I do appreciate, and I love how our conversations have turned into a friendship, basically, I'd like you to go into how you know Ricky Dugo.
Yeah. First, before I get onto that, I just want to say thanks again for having me on. I echo a lot of the things that you said. It's been really an honor to get to know you and watch all of this unfold. You've taken something from nothing to something that we have today. And it's something I wouldn't have been able to do, and I'm glad that at least I was able to be at least somewhat of a part of it. You will always have 100% of my support. So to get started, I guess maybe we can go back into 2016 is where it started. I think for me and my wife, we were kind of having a little bit of a rough patch in our lives. We're from the San Francisco Bay Area, and we were going through some major family problems. My parents were in the midst of a very ugly divorce, and there were other things going on, and we thought that maybe we should try somewhere else, that we kind of wanted to leave the Bay Area and some of the bad memories here. So My wife has a lot of family in the Chicago area, specifically in Gurnee and Skokie, Long Grove. And so we were looking to move over there, and we fell in love with this house, 1674 North Lock Lane in Vernon Hills. We bought it, and we actually weren't ready to move just yet. So we ended up renting it. We thought we'd rent it out for a little while until we were ready to move. And, being from California, we actually left Chicago, and we weren't able to put the house on the market. And so I told my realtors to do that for me. They would advertise the house, and, people would come see it, and then they would send me the applications. And, we received a few applications, but the best one that we received was from a man named Jeff Klein. And, he had a bunch of information on his application, and, everything looked, for the most part, okay. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't ideal, but, we needed to start a rental process. So we went with Jeff Klein, and everything was fine, for the first month, right? Like, in order to get the property, we requested the first month's rent and security deposit. So, I think the rent was like something like $39.50 or something like that. So it was almost, $8,000 that we had coming in. And that was paid, everything checked out. The realtor handed over the keys. And going back in time now, I kind of realized some of my mistakes here, that I wasn't there myself to do this, but it is what it is. Anyway, so yeah, for the first month, it was all fine. We had the first month's rent and the security deposit, and I think we also even maybe had the last month's rent. I can't remember anymore right now, but we had a good amount of money in the beginning. So when the second month comes around, all sorts of weird excuses start coming, and Jeff would call me, and now I know it wasn't Jeff, it was actually Rick, but he would call me saying that, I have this job going on at my job site, and I can't make it to the bank, or some issue happened at the job site that that needs my attention, and this and that, all sorts of crazy excuses. And Rick was actually assuming the persona of Jeff Klein, calling me as if he were Jeff. I think in a previous episode of the podcast, I think when you played one of those voicemails, and you can hear how he is pretending to be Jeff, saying that I have this issue and that issue, and I've heard pretty much every single excuse underneath the sun. And after a while, you start getting a little confused and suspicious. Like, what the heck is this? Like, how can a grown man not really have his life together? Like, how can you have such chaos in your life that you can't take care of the basics, right? Like, I would ask him, like, okay, you have 3 kids, so who's taking care of the kids if you're always at the job site? And he would say that, oh yeah, my sister Shannon is actually Rick's wife, as probably everybody knows, but he would pass her off as his sister. There were other signs that something was not right, because I would get certain bills, and the name of the people that those bills were in was like Shannon, for example. So he would make all sorts of weird excuses, and I think we got to about 2 months where he hadn't paid rent, and it was just so odd because on the phone, he was very convincing that he appeared as if he's going to make everything right and give me a timeline, a payment plan, and all this stuff. And then when those dates would come around, there's no money. And all the while, me and my wife are paying the mortgage at this property. We were paying our own rent in California, and I was also helping my family with some other stuff financially. So we were getting stretched real thin. It was to be, for lack of a better term, it was bad. So anyway, we we ended up contacting a real estate attorney to talk about options, and he mentioned that you can send a letter, certified mail, saying that, pay or quit. And I sent this letter to him with the language that is required in Illinois. And as soon as he receives this letter, it's so interesting, because as soon as he receives this letter, 3 months of rent is paid immediately, and so I was like, okay, but this is kind of my foolishness. He was very convincing. He's very suave and very a good talker, that he convinced me to allow him to stay. Like, okay, now we're good. Look, I had an issue at my office. I had some financial things while I'm moving my business from Trenton, Illinois, where Jeff Klein lives, to Chicago. Things have been crazy, but here's the rent. I'm sorry. And I thought that, okay, I guess some things happen sometimes, and we'll be good from here. My own father is in construction, and so growing up, I've seen how crazy that industry is, and I don't know if Rick knew that, or how did he know to hit that kind of like weak point in me. I have no idea if that's just a coincidence, but it was like uncanny that he was bringing up memories of like my childhood, and I've seen my father struggling, and I kind of just let it pass. It's okay, I understand things happen in this industry, and we started again. But then again, as anybody who has any experience with this guy, the excuses start again, and it's just it's getting more and more fantastic. I'm hearing things like my cousin was in a car accident, and I'm in the hospital right now, and just random crazy excuses that my job site froze over, so we have these fans to thaw out the ice or something like that. I don't know. I actually have all the texts that me and Rick ever sent to each other in a PDF file, and sometimes I go through it and I listen. I read the text, and it's just crazy to me how easily he was able to come up with the next lie. I mean, it was, I'm on the phone with him, let's say, and I'm confronting him about something, and it doesn't even take him a second, but he has the next lie ready to go. And I mean, I don't know how he did that. He's probably very practiced, but it was very well done. Anyway, so this is happening again, and we're now about a month and a half of unpaid rent. Kind of see where this is going, and so I contacted the real estate attorney again, saying that, look, this guy is doing this again. Maybe we move towards something a little bit more serious, potentially an eviction. I don't know. So the real estate attorney starts his process and gets a process server involved to serve the papers, and they are initially served to Shannon Dugo. He knocks on the door, Shannon Dugo opens, and they are served there. So that is the first time that I ever heard the Shannon Dugo name, or the Dugo name, really. This whole time, I thought I had been renting to Jeff Klein. Now, who is this Shannon Dugo person living in my house? So I confronted who I thought was Jeff Klein about this, and she pretty much said that he pretty much said that that is my sister. She stays at the house with me because she takes care of my kids and all the school stuff that they have to do while I'm at work. So okay. The process server also finds that certain bills are in Rick Dugo's name, like the pool, and I confront him about this too, who I think I'm talking to Jeff Klein, and he says that, yeah, Rick Dugo is her husband. So this is Rick Dugo claiming that he's Jeff Klein, saying that Shannon Dugo, his sister, is staying with him, and Rick Dugo is his brother-in-law, her husband. Right, so this is very confusing for me, and being in California, I can't just drive up to the property and not see anything. So I'm kind of like, left in the dark. And again, I don't know how did he figure out that this is the situation that's going to be. It's obviously advantageous for him to have a landlord that is not local, right? So I don't know if he did some research or it was just coincidence, but it was just that was the situation. So we push forward, and the real estate attorney is really pushing for eviction. He's saying that, I've seen this 1,000 times, and you really need to get possession of the house again. And what I'm starting to get a little bit scared about is that, I don't know right now who is living in the house or who Jeff Klein is or what's kind of getting away from me. So if Jeff Klein is inside the concrete business and he gets upset, I don't want him to go and damage the property, pull a concrete truck in and just throw a bunch of concrete in the house. I'm kind of unsure what my next move is going to be. So I tell the real estate attorney, do some more research, but let's move forward with the eviction, just to kind of put pressure on him, and then we'll see. So more pressure is applied, and we need this. He thinks that we're not stopping, and then 3 months of rent is paid immediately, just out of nowhere, And again, this is kind of like very strange to me because I'm calling Jeff Klein, or who I think is Jeff Klein, almost every other day, saying that look, you are behind on rent, and I can't let you stay here. You're going to get evicted, and I'm trying to put the pressure on, and I'm getting all sorts of excuses. But then randomly one day, he just decides to pay. And again, it's always that, oh, look, I had cash flow issues, and I had this and that at my office, and my bank accounts didn't have the right funds, and now I got it figured out, and my assistant's going to take care of it. And it's like, talking in circles, and you can never really make sense of what is actually going on. So he pays the 3 months rent, and he pays the next month's rent as well. This is some $18,000 or $20,000 or something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but it's a lot of money to be coming in at once. So
would you say, I have one quick question for us. Would you say, is this in the 2017 time frame, or is this back in 2016? Because I think the listeners are going to want to know, how long did you actually rent this house out, or how long was the lease on this house?
So the lease was for 2 years that we signed, and the actual amount of time that Dugo stayed in the house was for about 1 year and 3 months. So this would be in probably mid-2016 all the way up to end of 2017.
Great.
Yeah. I can give you the exact dates, but I can figure that out later.
Yeah. I'm almost positive he was living in that house still in the March-April time frame of 2018. All good. Keep on going. I hate that this happened. I love how you're telling this story for us.
Yeah. So, okay. So, a pattern is starting to emerge where every time that we apply pressure, he, figures something out and he pays his rent. But, I can't fund, months at a time of rent. You're talking about $10,000, $20,000. And we have our own rent to pay. We have other issues going on in my family that I'm helping out with financially. And it's just very, very tight. I remember that my wife and I we were stuck in a kind of like a 1-bedroom apartment. We wanted to move. It was not a very good area. And I just told him, look, we're in a situation right now and we can't move. I don't even have enough money to take you out to a nice dinner. And, I hate to put it like this, but there's a male ego. And there's a requirement for a man to be able to take care of his wife. And I really felt like I had like really screwed up, and I wasn't able to do that, take care of that responsibility of mine. And it was honestly the worst feeling in the world. I mean, aside from all the money that we had lost and, the stress that we were going through, I would look at her face and I'd like remember telling her that, yeah, we can't go out right now. We can't do this. We have to really tighten our belts until we get out of this situation. And then, I'd go to work the next day and I'd hear my colleagues at the office saying that, we went on this trip and we did this house upgrade and all sorts of stuff. And I'm just thinking that, like, dude, I would really just like to take my wife out to dinner. It's not that much to ask. Right. Anyway, so, after he's paid the second time around, he always kind of pays like the back rent, but never enough to kind of fully come back to zero. It's always like a little bit left to kind of string you on. And so, I've kind of had it at this point because the next month again the excuses start, and they're getting more and more hard to believe. One time I remember he called and told me that his aunt had passed away and that they were really close, and he was with the family, and he can't get to the bank right now to pay the rent. And mind you, there are electronic methods to pay rent, so you can do it from your phone. We're not living in 1900s or something like that. It takes literally like 5 seconds. But anyway, he tells me that his aunt had passed away. Later, I found out that it was actually his mom who had passed away. And when I found that out, not at the time that he was telling me, but later, I was just so surprised to hear that he's using his mom as an excuse in his scams. I mean, do you have no shame? That was something when I found that out. Anyway, so I told the real estate attorney that, look, this is a pattern, and I just want him out now. Let's just do the eviction. Forget about just applying pressure. Let's just go through with it. I'm really tired of all this nonsense. Even if we lose some money along the way, I think the stress is too much for me. So the real estate attorney does his work, and in addition, I'm kind of doing my own little investigation. This is before I met you, Adam. And I found this post by Russell James Fisk, who was talking about how Dugo had stolen about $10,000 from him. And I went to Facebook and I found Russell's profile, and I started talking with him. And I told him that, this is what's going on, and I saw your post. What do I do? So he told me that this guy is really dangerous, and he uses his physical stature to intimidate people. He had heard that he had just moved into a new house in Vernon Hills, and I was sitting there thinking, what the hell, man, that's my house. And so he tells me that he's got connections with the mafia, and that he's protected, and that he can basically do anything, and the cops won't come after him. And anytime that anybody tries to come up and confront him, he threatens to hurt their family and get the mafia involved and stuff. So I asked Russell that, have you gone to the police about this? I mean, if we can, kind of what you were doing as well, but had way more success with. I asked him, let's get together and band all these victims that have been affected, and let's go to the police because this guy is very, very dangerous, and he's obviously continuing to do this and has no intention of stopping. But yeah, Russell said that he did go to the authorities, but the authorities didn't listen to him because he didn't have anything on paper. It was all verbal. And the statute of limitations had passed, so he couldn't really do anything. He was out of luck. But he told me to contact another victim that had recently been scammed. His name was Britt. And he gave me his phone number, and I called him the next day. And we talked kind of similar story to a lot of what he has done with everybody else. This electronics deal that you have to come in. It's a one-time, use it or lose it kind of thing, and you can make a lot of money. I think Britt lost some $30,000, something like that. I don't know for sure, but he was very upset, and he was ready to go forward with the authorities. So I told him, okay, I'll call you next week, and we'll discuss more. So I called him next week, and over the weekend I was talking with my attorney, and we were pushing forward the eviction and whatnot. So when I called Britt, he told me that Russell had been murdered over the weekend, and I got so scared hearing that, because Russell was telling me that anybody who confronts him and kind of goes against him, they get physically hurt, and then now this is what happened. So I called my wife, told her to lock all the doors, lock the windows. We're going to stay home, maybe move in with my dad a little bit or something like that. I don't know what we're going to do, but I was very scared because Dugo had my address on the lease. So, if he was truly part of Mafia or anything like that, he could easily send somebody. And it turned out all to be fake and false. But at the time, it was very scary because I was literally told that, he goes after the people that come after him, and then that's what happened. Turned out to be completely unrelated. But, yeah, that was very scary.
That's remarkable. I completely forgot, and I completely forgot also, Faraz, that you had the opportunity to speak with Russell James Fisk. I reached out to him as one of the first people in the late May timeframe. I didn't know that he had been murdered. And I just find that to be absolute. You brought like chills to my, up and down my spine, and the hairs are raising on my arms. That must have been a harrowing experience. I know it's completely unrelated, and I do want to make sure that people know Russell James Fisk's murder was completely unrelated to anything with Ricky Dugo. It happened to be a crazy person that had an episode and actually ended up killing multiple people on a day in Kansas City. I do want to clarify that this was not a hit by Ricky Dugo. I do not want to blow up his ego anymore or scare people off the next time somebody runs into him. He's not in the Mafia. So keep on going, for us. You're doing great.
Yeah, exactly. It was completely and totally unrelated. But, being in California, I have no idea what's going on the ground in Chicago. So we continue putting the pressure on Rick Dugo. By this time, I realized that Jeff Klein is not actually living in the house anymore. By this time, I've realized that Jeff Klein is not living in the house at all. It's Rick Dugo and his wife, Shannon Dugo, and their 3 children. And the way that I figured that out is because we continued using the services of the real estate attorney, and they had a process server that was doing their investigation onto what's going on at that house. So they looked at who are the cars registered to in the name. The names that the cars are registered to that are sitting outside in the driveway, who is getting mail delivered to the property, what name is the utilities the pool service also had a variety of different vendors that would come out and service the pool. So what name was that in? And it all pointed to either Rick or Shannon Dugo. And then they also did a trace on Jeff Klein and found that he lives in Trenton, Illinois, and had never actually been in Vernon Hills to live in this house. So when I got this news, I was obviously very upset. I didn't know how this could have happened. It could have been that Jeff Klein gave Rick Dugo the keys if they knew each other, or Rick Dugo, more likely Rick Dugo used Jeff Klein's information to get access to this home and potentially, some identity theft or something like that. So I didn't know how this has happened, but I needed to get him out. And we pushed forward. The process server actually went down to Trenton, Illinois. The issue was that the lease was in Jeff Klein's name. And so in order to push forward, we needed to know that we've served the right person. And, the attorney said that the judge isn't going to like it if it's served on Rick Dugo, because Rick Dugo is not actually living inside. It doesn't have a lease in this property. So the process server went down to Trenton, Illinois, and found Jeff Klein's house. And I think he squatted there until Jeff Klein had to come out and walk the dog. Jeff Klein, for whatever reason, somehow knew what this was about. He didn't want to come out or meet the process server, and he just kind of tried to wait it out. The process server just hung out for like a day until Jeff had to come out and walk the dog. And then the process server served him the papers, and he started cursing and saying all sorts of things. So I personally believe that Jeff knew what was going on, and I knew what this was about. The other part that leads me to believe that Jeff knew is that shortly after, Rick Dugo, posing as Jeff, messaged me via SMS saying that they're trying to serve me in Trenton, and I told you I'll get this all squared away and all that sort of stuff. So somehow Jeff, after being served in Trenton, must have called Rick saying that, hey, what the hell is going on? I thought you would live there and pay the rent and all that stuff. Now I have papers served against me. So anyway, so now we have something to go with, and we're moving forward with the eviction. I think it was May 29th, if my memory served me correctly, that Dugo was actually evicted from our home. And up until that point, he tried every excuse in the known to man to kind of get me to back off. He even came up and told me that his uncle, by the name of John Grant, would buy the house and that he would live there, and that they were working up the papers and drawing up the agreements and things like that. And none of this was flying by me anymore, because I had heard every single excuse up until that point. So we pushed forward with the eviction, and I think at some point Dugo realized that I'm not going to back down. So he started talking in a slightly different tone, saying that, look, we're going to get everything out and we'll move and whatnot. So I decided that everything kind of got messed up because I wasn't there when we rented it out in the first place. So for this eviction, I'm going to go to Chicago, and I am going to make sure it gets done right. So I book a flight, and I rent a car, and I fly out. And at this point, we're still not sure exactly what Dugo is capable of. I have never met this person before in my life, and when I tell this plan to my wife, she obviously throws a fit that, this is absolutely not something that you're going to do. But I can't, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. And I just couldn't sit in California while all this was going down. So kind of without her blessings and permission and whatnot, I took that flight and I went to Chicago for a week. And the whole time, Rick is telling me that we'll work something out. But when I landed, I think I got a text from him saying that, look, eviction's tomorrow. We're going to be out of the house and by midnight, and you can have the property back. So, okay. Right. So when I received that text message, I was just finishing renting a car, and I thought that, if he's leaving, there must be a moving truck outside that he was storing his belongings in and whatnot. So I could figure out where that moving truck was going. I could learn his new address and, kind of keep the police informed and whatnot. And then maybe also inform his new landlord that, look, this is what's about to happen. You need to stop right now. So I drove to the house around 9 p.m. And when I got there, I found the driveway completely empty. The house was completely dark, and there was like what seemed to be like a refrigerator near the garage. But there was no movement in or around the house, and there was no moving truck, and that plan kind of went in the water. So the thing, though, is that I saw that house in darkness, right, and I relived all of the plans that my wife and I had to make this a home, right. This was the first time that I've seen the property since purchasing it, a year and a half ago, and kind of just brought back all of the things that we were going through, financially, emotionally. This whole thing affected our marriage. It was a very difficult time. So, I drove. That plan didn't work out, and so I drove to the Airbnb that I had rented. And the next morning, I met my realtors at their house. At their office at about 10:30. The eviction was scheduled for noon. We finished our paperwork early, and so we decided to head over to the property and wait for the sheriff together. At that time, I think I received a text from Dugo saying that the house was cleared out at midnight, and we're not there anymore, and, here's the house, the code to the house, and everything like that. And I thought that was very kind of him to give me the code to the house, instead of having to break the door down and things like that with the sheriff. It's just interesting that he did that, because, it would have been kind also to just be a normal, regular dude and pay the rent or not scam people out of millions of dollars, right? That's is odd. I'll go into this a little bit later, but I just really struggle to understand the psyche of, his decisions and, what he's doing. So anyway, when I get there with the realtors, the refrigerator that I had seen the night before was gone, and the house was deserted. I don't know how they transport that refrigerator, but, there was no moving truck, or it's just strange, how they're able to move without ever being seen. The process server had a similar situation that, there are clearly footsteps in the snow, so people are going in and out, but he has never seen them come in and out. So I don't know how did they do that. Anyway, so when I entered the house, I really expected it to find it in shambles. We just evicted him and his family, and they were living there for the past year. I imagine that they were in a rush to gather all their belongings and move out. And maybe there might be a little bit of agitation towards me that, I went through with it. At the very least, I expected that there would be, some signs of wear and tear that would need to be fixed, and it was so strange to me that I actually found the house in pristine condition. Okay, I expected to find maybe some holes in the wall or, some signs of use. Aside from a little bit of the dust on the floor, it almost seems like the house hadn't been used at all. I walked through the home, which was incredibly difficult. I was walking on the floor where my wife and I plan to raise our children, and it just puzzled me that over a year of use, and there's no signs of wear and tear or any use that you naturally expect to be present. For example, like just where you keep your bed, right? There are the indentations of the foot of the bed in the carpet, that, or your dresser or your nightstand or things like that, right? Like I expected those things to be there, and they're nothing. In the smallest room of the house, the room that I expected to make my study, I did find some of those indications of use, right? Like, scuffed up walls and things like that. Pinholes in the walls where they may have hung pictures. And I came to the conclusion that, the entire family of 2 adults and 3 small children were all living out of the smallest room possible. And they had left this box of their belongings by accident in the home. And I actually learned a little bit about how they used to live via that box. So in it were pictures of family together and Dugo and his friends throughout the years. There were cards that Shannon had gifted Rick on the children's behalf on their birthday. All these cards were fixed onto black construction paper, which then were attached to the walls via push pins. And these little frames, I guess, what normal people would frame their pictures and family pictures and stuff like that in their house, these were done through push pins so that if they needed to, they could be out of that house in 5-10 minutes. It's just a box of all of their belongings. They didn't have any furniture. They didn't have any anything really. They just were living in that one room, and they had the fridge downstairs for food, and that was incredible to me. The cards also talked about how wonderful a father Rick was to the children, and how they all loved him so much. They painted him to be like this model father inside the home, and how he always does so much for the kids and whatnot. And as everybody knows, outside the home, he was anything but that. He was a predator.
It's wild.
Yeah. I'm a parent now, and it just makes me sick to my stomach to think about how these children were living. They were all in this tiny, tiny 1-bedroom. The house that we rented was 5 bedrooms, 4 baths. It was quite spacious. And this whole entire family was living in one of the bedrooms, the smallest one, with no furniture. And I think at the time they had a 6-month-old baby too. So, it's just crazy to me what their living situation was.
And do you feel like that situation and how they're in this humongous 5,000 square foot house living in a tiny room, it's because that would be like a pick up and go type of situation?
Yeah, absolutely. They didn't want to spread out in the house, because if it came to be that they have to leave, now there's more things that they need to collect. They needed to be in a small space and have their things very easy to collect so that they can just get out.
Yeah, it's interesting because they would also, for us, they would have storage. They'd have like storage facilities, storage lockers, I should say, all over the northern suburbs. They had multiples that they actually did store furniture and antiques and a lot of the things that you would normally see in a house. They kept off-site. Very interesting to gain a little bit of insight into how they lived and why they may have lived like that. So you're about at the time, you had mentioned about May 29th, right? About the time that he was evicted. That's also about... I'm sorry?
May 2018 was when he was evicted.
Yeah, May of 2018.
Sorry.
And in late May of 2018 is when the Ricky Dugo spoof page goes live on Facebook. Do you want to talk about how did you find that?
Yeah, so I think it was Britt who told me about this page, and that this page is set up, and you should email this connedbyrick@gmail.com. And that's actually how I first met you. I emailed my story to connedbyrick@gmail.com, and you responded. We chatted on the phone a little bit for a couple hours, actually, and exchanged stories. And that was the first time where I think I actually realized what had happened. Before I thought it is just maybe like a squatter or something like that. And I had heard Russell's story and Britt's story, but I didn't know how expansive all this was. And then the first time that I talked to you, and you told me that you have talked to hundreds of victims, I didn't realize until then that what I was dealing with. I can honestly say that my story may be a little different than most other people, because I didn't actually interact with Rick Dugo directly. I never kind of made any one of these deals. He was a tenant, I guess, or a squatter in my house. But in a way, he used that house to find other victims, and that makes me really sad. That if it wasn't for that house, if he didn't come there, certain other people wouldn't have maybe gotten scammed.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point. So that house, being as beautiful as it is in the Greg's Landing neighborhood, which is a beautiful, master plan community in Vernon Hills, that house helps him to provide that image of burgeoning success. It affords him, this ability to, tell all of his neighbors that, look, I've arrived. I'm in this house with this pool. Then he's infiltrating the, Flamingo Friday night parties and the soirees and all of those things that happen to the neighbors in Greg's Landing. Those are not, they may have been because of where he was living, but it's not because you rented him a house. I think for you, it's got to be tough because you had no idea. I mean, he had covered his tracks so well from the application that was not in his name. I've seen that application for Oz, and I've told you this. I believe that application and subsequent applications filed about a year later, where he's using, Jeff Klein's information and fine finish concrete as a front to obtain all of these things illegitimately, is all it's all connected because he's forging these documents over state lines, so you have all sorts of fraud that's going on. So I want to ask you this, being that you're in California, being that you've never met Rick Dugo, how did all this make you feel?
Well, during the time that we were going through it, I really didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who was telling me the truth or what was true. I was very... the financial situation that he caused me and my family was very bleak. I mean, there were times where we really were struggling, and it's very painful for me to hear, to relive that, even today. I think during that time, I was just feeling a lot of confusion and frustration that, what is going on? I don't know who to believe, and I don't know how I got myself into this situation. I just want to get out of it. After certain things started becoming a little clearer, right? Like after you did your investigation, and after I got a little better understanding of how exactly all this stuff happened, what kind of person Rick Dugo is, think I just felt very angry. I felt so angry that someone could do this sort of stuff to other people. He's taking from people who consider him their friend. He is violating their trust, and he's just putting people through so much misery. And, I still feel a lot of anger even today that why, and then I think I feel a little bit of anger that no one took any serious look at him. How was he able to do this for so many decades? We have laws for this. We have authorities for this, and I'm sure that people before you also reported him, but no one took really any serious look at it, and it just allowed him to continue going and doing this as if he was, untouchable.
It's correct.
And then, what's that?
It's correct. There were other people that had filed police reports. There have been more than 3 that have actually gone to the FBI, and the FBI took down information. But the FBI simply said he wasn't a big enough fish. So I understand. Keep on going.
That's the part that I don't understand is that, what is a big fish then? Because Rick Dugo has stolen millions of dollars from, hundreds or maybe even thousands of people. So I don't understand then, if that's not a big fish, then, what is? Look at the misery that he's caused, the pain and suffering that he's inflicted on people. I mean, you were toying with people's livelihoods, and that's really not okay. And I think after all this stuff has transpired, I think today, after your investigation, after how you were able to get the authorities to listen and actually do something about this, now he's sitting behind bars. I feel a little bit of a sense of relief that he's not going to do this again to anyone for at least a couple of years. Who knows what he's going to do once he gets out. But, at least for a couple of years, he's not going to be able to do this to anybody else. And anytime that you search his name now, all this information will be available. So someone, hopefully, if he does try this again, will be better prepared and more informed about what kind of person this guy is.
Yeah, that's the hope for us, for all of this. That's the whole reason that I felt it necessary to embark on telling this story and having it out there forever, is to protect everyone, just one more person from falling prey to Rick Dugo. Because that's really the long and short of it, is so many entities and agencies did nothing with any of this, and they let him go, and it just kept on building up this image of he's untouchable, he's unstoppable, and it just emboldened him to keep on going. And then that just propagates more and more crime and more theft. So I'm with you, buddy, wholeheartedly.
Society can't function like that, right? Society is built on some level of trust. Who you do business with is built on some level of trust. And I think Dugo had somehow figured out how to take advantage of that trust, the genuine, innate trust in most people. I would say, even after all this, how I have definitely become a little jaded, but I still believe that 99.99, the vast majority % of people are very good. But that's what he takes advantage of. That he takes advantage of the fact that most people are actually really good. They would help a friend in need. They are not going to take advantage of you. And but he takes advantage of that. And that's what I think makes me really angry. That, that's not okay. He has 3 kids. He has I mean, I don't know what those kids are going through right now. What kind of example are you setting for those kids? I think about that sometimes. And what kind of kids are they going to turn out to be?
That's a good point. I never really thought about that for us. I completely understand the frustration. I understand how you lose a little of that faith, and you feel like he's taken some goodness. Knowing he's behind bars, does that make you feel any better?
Yes, I think I was following the case and the ruling. I think it was a fair ruling. I think that justice was somewhat served as far as him spending time behind bars. I think it's sad that the other victims are probably never going to see any of this money ever again. And, to put into perspective, I lost maybe $35,000 or something like that in the whole Ricky Dugo fiasco, right? There was a lot of other money that we lost via the Chicago house and stuff like that. But because of Ricky Dugo specifically, it was about $35,000. And, comparatively, honestly, that is nothing compared to some of the other victims that I've read about. And I think that is what makes me I still feel that, justice was only partially done because, he may be sitting behind bars and he, his name is forever connected with this sort of stuff online. But you have so many people who lost tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, this is their maybe life savings or kids' college funds or retirement money or whatever, right? Like, I think that really, that's really unfortunate because, I'm a younger person and I have my full career ahead of me still. He targeted some people who are the elderly. He targeted some people who are in retirement, who are coming up to some large financial purchases, and some people weren't maybe able to pay their healthcare costs or whatever. And I mean, he just didn't have any shame in targeting anybody. Just anybody who had a dollar is a target. And that is just, sociopathic.
For sure. Yeah, it's absolutely sociopathic. And I think that's really what it doesn't differentiate him than any other sociopath or, con men. But, I think for people that are not sociopaths and con men, for us, it's hard to understand how you can do something so evil to somebody else on purpose, all premeditated, and have no feeling and have no shame and not be sorry,
Yeah, exactly. This wasn't an accident, right?
No.
You did this, and then you doubled down and tripled down on it.
For sure. And went back for more because it was never enough. So he strings you along by not paying rent, and then he pays some of the arrears, then he doesn't pay rent, and then he pays a little bit more. He gives you this hope, right? That maybe he's not so shitty. Maybe he's not such an asshole. But then it happens, right?
And I think one thing that I wanted to mention is that, it might sound like, it's not really a big deal, like rent is, you're not hurting anybody and stuff. But honestly, we had our own bills and stuff like that to pay. Really, it wasn't like, as if he's not paying rent, so it doesn't mean anything. We really relied on that, on that money because we had our own rent to pay, and we couldn't afford to pay the mortgage of a house that we're not even living in. that was, we loved the house, and so we wanted to move there eventually, but we were not in a financial position to just, pay the mortgage for 2 years until we were ready to move. Maybe there are people like that, but we were really struggling.
No, it's terrible. And to hear like that, I know that you're a successful guy, but to hear like that you had such sacrifices on the other end, those are those like soft costs that people don't think about. When I was talking to Detective Bill, we did an interview early on in this process, and those are some of the things that he had mentioned that I hadn't thought about. Was, for you it's like $35,000 in rent, but then what did that mean on the other end? You're saying that in San Francisco you're living in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment because you can't get out. You can't even take your wife out to dinner. So you have all of these things that are happening that are direct results of the pain and suffering that Ricky Dugo is putting you through, but you don't even know he's putting you through it because you don't know who the guy is. It's such a mind fuck, So, really.
I want to also mention, during this whole time, once I figured out all this had transpired, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, this just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like, why do all this? Just go get a job. It's so much simpler to just, do your 9 to 5, get your paycheck, and, enjoy life in the evening. And my friend looked at me very sternly and he said that, dude, you are looking at this completely incorrectly. He does have a job. This is his job. Right. And I think that really opened my eyes that, like, oh my God. That I was so shocked to hear that like someone could choose this lifestyle. Don't you think that would just be so much easier just to go get like some corporate job or whatever and, do well, build your career? That's like a tried and true method. But
so it's interesting. Yeah. And everybody says this for us. Everybody says if the guy just would have gotten a salesman job. I'm a salesman. I'm really good at what I do. This guy would have run circles around me, right? And he could have done something, like a salesman. I just think that he would have been insanely good in the real world in corporate America.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know where did he take a wrong turn somewhere in his teenage years or something like that. That some wire in his brain got incorrectly wired or something like that, but I really do think that he would have been an excellent salesman or even someone who is kind of like beyond that funnel a little bit and like helping people to integrate the technology after the sale is completely closed.
Yeah.
It's funny to me because where you apply your mind is so interesting. One thing I actually forgot to mention, in that box that he left at my house, there were like rosaries and church paraphernalia. So he was quite religious, and he would pray to the church and like all that stuff. I think it was St. Joseph's Church that he was involved with. And one thing interesting that I found was like donation slips to the church. So he was potentially donating money to the church and trying to get good favor with them.
So I'll exercise some caution here because that's the first time I've heard of that. I do know that he went to church in the past to specifically target other potential victims. It was a great place for him where he could use the gospel and Jesus Christ to make new friends and to make it a little bit easier for him to continue on in his con man ways. I'm not denying that he didn't donate money.
I mean, you see, this is exactly what I'm talking about, though, right? Like, even after all this, I still can't predict or understand his moves. You know, now that you said that, that makes sense. But it's funny to me, like, you know, even after all this, after all the interactions that I've had with him, I still haven't learned.
You haven't figured him out because he's a complete chameleon. And that's something that's, it's happened to all of us, is he morphs into anything and everything he has to be in a moment's notice. The guy can literally, spin on a dime, and in a heartbeat, he can mention or use his words to get you to believe anything, because he's that quick on his feet. A lot of victims and a lot of people that I talk to that know Ricky Dugo, they think like he's like dumber than a box of rocks, and I'm like, there is no way that he's not more intelligent than most, because he is. You know, he's well versed, he's well studied, he has an answer for everything because he's studied a script, he's practiced this, he's absolutely done this before, and then he knows he knows trigger words, and I think that he does do his due diligence on people. Maybe not like so much with you, knowing that you were out of town, not living there, but a lot of victims he specifically targeted. He didn't go after people that didn't have a lot of money. He really went after people that were starting to become successful, or those people that were successful, because I think he always wanted to give off that facade and that image, you know, that's what he wanted to be, but he wanted to do it where he didn't have to work at it for anything other than conning and scamming. Like, that was his job, like you said. So it's wild, I think, for most of us. And I know that it's wild for you. I think your story is super interesting. I love that you actually have in your possession this box of Ricky Dugo artifacts. And at some point, I do want to create this website. I just have not had the time, where we post up some of those pictures. Or, you know, maybe if this thing actually kicks off and gets really popular, we figure out a way to auction these things off. You know, you were
get
given
some money back to some victims, maybe.
Yeah. That would be absolutely the goal. You know, for us, I love the conversation. You know, is there anything else that you wanna say while you have this platform? Is there anything that comes to mind? This would be your time.
You know, I think whatever everybody has been through has obviously been harrowing and very difficult, but hopefully everybody has come out on the other end, landing on their 2 feet and a little better versions of themselves. You know, it's great to see that justice was somewhat served by him being behind bars. Hopefully, everybody can remember this throughout the rest of their lives, and hopefully never have anything like this happen to them again. And I hope that by the authorities taking care of Dugo, other people who thought that, you know, maybe I could do this, think twice.
Thank you so much, Faraz. Thank you for continuing to listen in. You just heard from Faraz and how the financial strain that Ricky Dugo put him through created immense amounts of stress for him and his wife. Faraz had no idea that the Dugos were living in his house as unknown occupants, as Dugo keeps the scam going by impersonating Jeff Klein on text and on phone calls. A story that changed Faraz, where after the Dugos swindled him for over $34,000, he decided to give up on his dream, and he sells the house before ever moving to that beautiful Greg's Landing neighborhood. On the next episode of To Catch a Con Man in the Victim's Voices, we will meet a young woman who met Ricky Dugo at Export Fitness, and over the span of a few months, a friendship was formed. Rick is now working out in her group, and over time she admits to him that she is struggling financially. And here comes Dugo telling her that he can be her hero and help her to build her credit.